Have they heard from Lori?
Yeah, I haven't heard from, didn't get a response from, so.
Okay,
Well,
well, we're fine. We got,
they were fine, we got it. We're good.
okay, but I will call to order the Thursday, September 8th, city council work session. Do I hear an adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Second. This, all those in favor, please say, feel good.
To make me feel good.
Larry, can you hear us?
It's pretty quiet. I can barely hear you.
Okay, well, I was pretty quiet when I was talking, so is that any better?
Yeah, it is. Thanks.
Okay,
We'll do our best.
We have to speak to the puck.
yeah, I didn't forget that. Welcome, Larry. Thanks for coming. If we can keep you here, we'll keep you till like 2 in the morning, New Jersey time.
Yeah.
All right, with that, we will do the council discussion topics. We have Calvin with us tonight. Welcome up to the table, Calvin. Calvin can be talking about the adoption of the 2018 International Building Code and other construction related codes.
Okay.
And the proposed building permit fees. He's an old pro at talking. He loves it.
Yes.
Howdy, everybody. I think you guys have all the fee schedule
You bet.
stuff that I made up. Those comparisons I have, they're right on the button. I've compared them with everything you see there, Mercer Island, Bellevue, Shoreline. We need to bump our fee schedules up. The price of homes right now, really, when you look at the reality of it, they're running about $350 to $400 a square foot to build. You can see Mercer Island's at $189.94. Bellevue, Shoreline, 148. I've averaged those out, even we're a small jurisdiction, came up with 150.87 for an average home. However, we get a lot of custom homes. We should be at 185. Now, again, those numbers are not real. The real numbers to build these things are 300, 400,000, I'm sorry, 300, 400 bucks a square foot to build. So the customs, that's why I added the custom in there at 185. I think Mercer Island's custom, if I remember, I've got it in my packet somewhere, is somewhere around 250 or something like that for custom home. We get a lot of tear downs on the beachfront, and we need to be in reality with our fee schedules. We're too far behind. So so I did all the comparables between all those different cities. Kenmore was weird because they have a weird fee schedule set up, but they adopted the ICBO valuation table just like we did. And that valuation table for a type 5B construction building is 153 a square foot. So now what you're looking at right now is we're just scrolling here. That's a different network. Then we're going to try and update mechanical and plumbing fees also. Those fee schedules have been set forever. If you look from left to right, you'll see what we're trying to increase to. Like the base fee is going to go up from 85 to 100. And then we're only adding so much, $2 here and there to our mechanical permits. Some of the other stuff might go a little higher. You go down to plumbing, same thing. The plumbing base fee is what it takes to input the thing for our permit tech and file it, archive it, and all that. So we're definitely way within everybody else. And our price of homes here, I'm going to go back on that. When you look at the homes that we're selling here, substantially higher in most jurisdictions by far. So anyhow, questions on any of that so far?
Yeah. Thanks, Calvin. I'm not tracking. So, and I'll go back with, what are we being asked to do? with regard to, I understand that there is one request to adopt the ICBA code for 2018.
Yes,
And so I have questions about that, but you haven't spoken to that. But are we being asked to approve new fee schedules?
Yes,
yes.
indeed.
And when are we gonna be asked to approve them? Because this is the first time it's been presented. The July 14 was taken off the agenda, so we haven't had any previous discussion about this. So when are you asking for approval of your first?
This would be your first session.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
is scheduled for the 22nd.
Okay, because
Yeah,
that's not what's said here. If you go to the. I understood. I thought you were asking for IBC approval today, not today.
No, this is
Work session.
it's a work session. We don't approve anything.
Well,
Yeah.
except we've talked about things in the work session. Approved it in the council.
With certain parameters and
Okay,
waivers.
This comes
Yeah,
back on the 22nd, and we need another touch.
Okay, but-
First meeting.
so I want to go back to your first slide.
Okay.
So when you talk about this, this isn't the building permit fees. Are you talking about square footage values or?
These are the fees. If you're looking at
Fees.
Mercer Islands, that's what they're charging per square foot for their valuation tables.
But as I understand, in looking at our municipal code, aren't we using the IDC valuation table?
Yeah, but the ICC valuation tables, everybody derives their fee schedules from that, but they can change that.
Because as I read what's in the municipal code, it says we use the current version of the ICC.
Well, the current version is at 150 a square foot.
Which is 158.
it's a floor, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you're,
Yeah, you're allowed, the jurisdictions are allowed to take those numbers based off their budgets and adjust them accordingly. That's a baseline that's done for the states. Here's what it'll cost. Okay, even though the reality is it costs a lot more to do that. So
Which costs a lot more to do that. The
in
cost of
real life, the
construction
building
is-
so much per square foot.
No, I get that. And I've experienced that, but the valuation tables generally are less than the full cost of construction.
Yes.
But the fee should reflect what we see as our cost of doing business.
so, John, if I'm, sorry to interrupt here, but if I'm hearing you, I was gonna say this a second ago. The state statute stipulates that we need to recover our fees, and that's what we should do. And if I'm going where I think you're going, I apologize, it's probably my wife, it's soccer practice here. Are you suggesting these fees are low?
No,
They seem low to me, honestly.
no,
I mean, I
not-
appreciate your conservatism on this, but I think we're in a place where the fees right now are not keeping up with what the market is suggesting and what you're observing. And our obligation to the community is to recover our costs, and the state statutes allow us to do that. So, okay,
Yeah, let him figure out so we can get
Go
on
ahead.
the same page. So you're
So
saying
my question is what it costs in Mercer Island Bothell to run the building department based upon generation of fees for the cost.
sure.
Is what does it cost like Forest Park? Because this is a cost increase. I mean, it's a fee, but in essence, it's a tax. Taxes are used to generate money for governments to run. So what's our basis for establishing these?
Well, the
costs?
building department itself, my understanding, I've been here 18 years, that it needs to pay for itself.
Okay.
Okay, with 2 employees and with the budget we have, we barely meet that number now. And have barely met that number in years, right? Other than when we had Paul.
Okay, but But it's not what it costs Mercer Island or.
No, so-
Bob, it's what it
No, it's
costs-
actual cost. That's what
Yeah,
the state.
like,
What does it cost?
how do you-
us? Yeah,
How do you come to
yeah, because
the
part of,
value of your?
because part of it is that there are, as you go to the other table, there are fees for certain things that were not raised. And I would say on some of those, I know that it actually costs more than to do those kinds of inspections. So we're not recovering our costs on those. So how are we deriving, how do we say to our citizens that these are fair and reasonable? Because it's not what it costs Shoreline, it's what it costs Lake Forest Park.
So, an exercise you can go through is the average time that it takes the building department to review a permit. The number of inspections, time for designating, et cetera. And you have those times for each position, take their hourly wage. To what is the true cost of processing. That's all. What are you charging?
I think Larry can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, whoever was just talking, I couldn't hear that.
Sorry.
That
That was me.
Sorry, Phil.
Sorry, Larry, I was sitting up under the side. No, what I was saying is there's an exercise you can go through where you take the amount of time that it takes to do a building permit for a custom home and an average home for the positions that touch it. And a lot of time, and I've done this in the past where it's, you've got your building official, you've got your permit tech, you've got the planner that's going to touch it as well. You put their hourly wage to the amount of time they spend on an average permit and generate a number. And that gives you what the true cost is to the city.
And
Right.
add some margin for overhead.
Well, yeah, you've got.
Yeah,
overhead,
yeah.
it's got-
For both
Yeah.
costs, which is
Well,
baked
yeah,
into the.
Yeah. I just think you don't wanna under recover either. I wanna.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, you have
Be
to find,
fair,
you have
but
to
not
find that
under
balance.
recovered.
And you also have to take into consideration what other things are paying for overhead too.
Right.
There's a lot of things.
Right, so what I think we want to do is transparent to our citizens, say, this is the cost of doing business for the services that we provide. And we think that we're providing the right level of service, and therefore we need these fees to generate. Because as I look, some of those things haven't changed. My guess is they haven't changed for years.
Which are you talking about?
I think when you were getting the plumbing.
The plumbing permits and the
Um,
other things.
The
Well,
plumbing permits are all changed, but they're only going up very little. They don't need them.
Well, I mean, we're not changing the cost of the backflow prevention.
Well, no.
The question is, why not?
Backflow prevention devices are only inspected by us, but they're certified by the water purveyors here, not us.
I understand, but when you look at your cost, does it represent our?
That-
I think the point is, over time, the city's costs go up.
Yeah.
Wages go up, benefits go up, et cetera, and so should they go up? And so this is actually a pretty easy spreadsheet to run. And so we can double check those numbers. And then the council's decision always is, you know, if that's truly our cost and that's well outside the market, then maybe the council chooses to take a lesser amount and then you can make that decision. So we can walk through that pretty quick.
Tracy. And on point, thank you, Ken Calvin, for your presentation. That the reason why you're doing these comparisons with the other cities is not to be in line with them or anything, but just to make sure that when we use the valuation table to recover our costs, we aren't doing something so strange that it is way out of line with what other cities. Because I imagine your hours that you're charging are similar to what your counterpart in Shoreline or whatever are charging. And so the cost should be similar. And so
Right.
that's the only reason we're doing that kind of comparison. We're not using that to set the fees.
No, well, when I looked at the budget that we have here. And what we've taken in the last couple of years, we were below what we were supposed to be taking in. With the new numbers I have up there, we'll pay for building and the services, including fire, planning, public works, which is also made a due review. So, I didn't think about the idea of raising the cost too much over the surrounding cities. Now there's things in the code that say, well, if you pay for 100%, if your budget is 100% cost, and you need to do that off your fees, which here we do. Those numbers for me are exactly where we need to be to take care of the services that we provide as building, planning, public works, everybody that touches those plans, fire department, drainage review, any of the civil stuff. That doesn't include stuff in PACE. So those are the numbers I came up with, that I looked at our budget, but that's where we need to be. If I went too higher, can you imagine the kind of crud I'm gonna catch from the public and say, well, we're at $180 a square foot for evaluation, no one else is. And then I'm gonna have to explain, well, why are we so high? Well, we need to pay for ourselves. Was that really, are we bumping over what we're taking, bringing in or whatever? So anyways.
And just one more point, if we can cycle back to mechanical permit fees. Just like zero at level review, there's just see if there's any inconsistencies. Under a commercial hood, class 1 hood under ranges, it says there's a $2 increase, except it says the same.
Well, it's the class 1 hood is inspected by fire.
Oh, right. But I'm just saying that basically, all the other ones seem to, the last column seems to reflect the difference in fees.
Yeah, well, a boiler really isn't a big deal for me. That's why I didn't bump that one up.
Right. So that's not,
We don't certify the backflow devices on a boiler.
so that's not gonna cause questions for some.
No.
Okay, no, just making sure.
Yeah, Calvin, I think it's just a math question,
Yeah,
because
yeah, there are some
$30
things that,
staying the same, but it said there's a $2 change.
yeah, yeah.
So I think we're just, I just want to,
I
that's
got
just an
you.
Excel table issue. Formula issue.
I don't know nothing about these things either. I just saw the inconsistency.
Yeah, I got you.
So we'll do that too.
So, as I read our municipal code, then and there's an item that we're gonna talk about tonight, is that we go through a resolution for adoption of the fees on a regular basis. Some of these increases are 40 to 50%. And so the citizens will know that when they apply for the building permits. This is a significant increase. And so having the ability to demonstrate why we think these are needed, such as we haven't increased them in 10 years or 5 years. This is something that we should be doing on a regular basis so that we aren't in a situation where we're saying to the public, we're going to increase your fee by 50%. Well, what they may not know is that that's still lower than neighbors, and we haven't changed the fees in 10 years. As a city, we should be reflecting these on a regular basis to both recover our costs as well as to recognize that people can get around an average rate of inflation, not 50%.
In that case, we probably need to raise them higher because we probably need to hire some more staff and be able to take the time to do that every year. So I think we need to readjust these higher so we can do what we want to do every year. Is that what we're planning on doing?
Well, the typical code cycle, when you adopt fees is every 3 years.
Okay.
You don't re-adopt fees every year.
Okay.
So, we were busy with Pulte for a lot of years till 2018. I'm a one-man band here. So I don't send anything out for review or anything. That being said, should I have updated the fee schedule? Well, absolutely, but I know the town and I deal with these people, I've been dealing with them for 18 years. I don't really see any builders getting worked up over that cost, given what they're paying in other jurisdictions. When they come into town and they go, your fee schedules are way low. And now they're gonna look at the reality of it and go, well, yeah, you're in line with everybody else. I honestly don't see. Maybe I'm out of touch there.
I do think that John makes many good points here, which is, we should make the case that our costs are going up and therefore our fees are going up, and make sure that that's the rationale. And if, to the extent we haven't raised our fees in a while, we should reference back to how long it's been since we raised our fees. And yet everyone has seen the amount of building and remodeling and so forth that's going on in our jurisdiction. I also think then we should try to be more consistent about reviewing them and raising them every 3 years. Because it's much better to have a small percent increase that's incremental over a shorter period of time than, an adjustment every 10 years. So I agree with both of those points. I don't think it takes away from what you're saying, Calvin, at all. I just think it's a way for us to better articulate and manage this whole issue.
Oh, yeah, well, I knew that I'd catch some static.
We're,
I don't think it's static.
we're on your side.
No, no.
Yeah.
But believe me, Jeff and Bill have talked about it. And, I knew there was gonna be questions on it. Like I said, it should have been raised.
Well, and it's good to hear now. I mean, you have these questions, the public will have these questions.
I
So
agree with you. totally.
we can give you the methodology, we can give you the timings, this last increase. Just show people why they are what they are.
Go ahead.
Volumes over the last, trending volumes over the last 2 years, because I think the one thing I'm worried about is we hit a certain volume or then we'll need to add permit tech or something of that nature, or, replace you with 2 people.
It's coming.
I know. Not yet. Not loud, not yet. So I think just that, if there's some sort of foreshadowing that we can kind of get of where we're gonna be going next to give us a sense of what our next bump
Yeah,
might
it's tough
start
because
reflecting.
we went through 4 years where we were pulling in 650 to 700,000 a year. We run about 350 to 400, 450,000 right now. Last year wasn't a great year either. So.
Yeah, Larry, sorry.
Yeah, thanks. I do have a question. I agree with what others have said, that this seems, as long as we can justify the increase that and then communicate that, that's important. My question, if you look at the current page, the building permit fees would be going up by about 40–50%. But then if you go to the next page, the mechanical fees, the plumbing fees, those are only going up by about 10%.
Right.
And I was wondering, why is it that the building fees are showing such a bigger increase relative to the other types of fees?
Okay, the mechanical and plumbing and sewer, well, I'll leave sewer out of it, it's not going. The mechanical and plumbing don't take plan review unless they're commercial or multifamily. So in other words, a mechanical permit can be bought on the portal and downloaded right away. So really, the cost that we're incurring is just the cost of my permit technician to put it in the system, archive it, send the permit out, me to do my inspection. That's it. It's nothing like a building permit where, like I said, it's gonna go through all the different 4 areas for review. A plumbing permit doesn't go into review at all. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yep. Yeah, thanks for clearing that up.
Okay.
Yes, John.
I think that makes sense, although at $30, it's hard to imagine that we're covering our costs to receive input, archive, etc. So I think it's useful to understand, are our costs being reflective of what we're charging? Or the other way around, are our charges being reflective of our costs? And then we're just not thinking of them as simple, and therefore $30 seems okay. What you'll find is that it's actually much higher than that.
Yeah, I think to your point, if it takes an hour time just for one, just Calvin or Desiree, we've already exceeded that $30. Yes. Point taken.
Well, I think that comes back to my comment about the state allows us to recover our costs. And I think that it maybe what we should be thinking about, not to do the, and change the paradigm too far here, but with uncertain times and things that have been changed so rapidly, building costs and, everything has been kind of crazy. Maybe we should be thinking about, we change our fee schedule as a city every fall.
Every fall.
Yeah, every fall. And and this is predicated on the idea that we want to support the team and make sure the team is funded appropriately under state statutes. So maybe we should be thinking about a little bit more advanced schedule, not to put any more burden on you, Calvin, but to support you on the contrary, to really make sure that we can figure out a way, to your point, Mayor, to make sure that we're recovering the costs and you guys are getting taken care of. And if you need additional staff, then we can build up the team and go from there. Because I think that the 3-year cycle, or whatever is kind of traditional, maybe that's not something that is applicable to where we are now. And I think again, under state statute, we're allowed to recover the costs and do our best to do that. There's a little bit of variables there, but I think that there's some places here too where as we do it, if we do it incrementally like that, or change it incrementally, then to the point about what John was saying and Councilor Bodie was saying, that it's not a big, surprise to somebody in the community. So maybe it's maybe there's some sort of interval that makes more sense, but I think yearly kind of makes sense where we are with things being so fluid, and labor costs are just all over the board.
Well, that's the thing. None of us thought it'd be 10% inflation right now. And we would have never dreamed that the workforce had dried up and there's nobody to hire. I've got Edmonds trying to poach our police department, Monroe's trying to, everybody's trying to poach us. So I'm kind of I hate to be this way, but we need to be thinking in the future that somebody's going to come knocking on his door and we should have been able to pay him a little more, but we can't because we can only recover our costs. But we have no crystal ball that tells us what our costs are going to be next year. So that's kind of scary, because right now that's the world. Everybody's after everybody's people.
You gotta remember too, Mayor, that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Those numbers that I have up there in comparison, if I take all of our numbers, and if some of the jurisdictions, what they do, they take their $150, let's just say the ICBO says the number is $150. Now you work whatever you want for your overhead off that. How much overhead do you have above that $150? You'd be looking at $250 a square foot. And that's not reality. That's really not. So at those numbers, when I look at the budget that I have every year that I do with Lindsay and with Phil and with Jeff, that budget, I'm in line with our budget to pay next year with that budget there. So I know it's high to lay off from the city, believe me. I hear from every customer in town. They call me all the time. So, all day.
With that, and so in mind, just one last thing, then John again, but so. Okay, I just want to move forward here. We all are in agreement that we need to do something better and get it so it's in line with what the city really needs to cover its costs. At John's point, we and Lori's, we need to figure out a way to take the numbers and put them into a way that we can say to the citizens, this is why we're doing it this way. So we can do that. That's real, and that's so everybody, to be honest, we all want the same thing. I just need to make sure, we all need to make sure that he's covering the department, and we need a little bit of space just in case something weird happens. Because, we are, I think, it's really kind of scary right now, the way things are out there. So, but we have to say this, I do never get a complaint about Calvin. He's kind of a rock star.
I don't know.
That's why he wears those glasses.
Well, I know. You gotta put the
But
you gotta put the glasses on.
That's a big project coming into our city, a big development project. I know we have to hire a contract for the resources, but I do worry now and then about, whether our staffing is adequate, how we factor into that. So I think with that in mind, it isn't just inflation, it's also the building climate where, we knew that our city would become a city of tear downs and build, more than $1 million homes. I certainly didn't see that coming to like Forest Park. So I just want us to stay flexible and fluid for what comes our way. And therefore, I think the idea of changing the fees or reevaluating our overhead regularly, I don't know if it's once a year or once every other year, something like that.
Whatever works for you guys.
I do think it's important. Yeah, I do think it is important because I feel like it's been a changing time, and Calvin has adapted without costing us more money, right?
Right.
So, that is actually, to his, credit, but it could be true that, like Forest Park so well, that when you decide to, go elsewhere or retire, that we have to hire 2 people to replace you, right?
Well, the only thing, just to make it clear. Trillium and Westbrook Flats, when we did those in the
Yeah.
early 2000s. We used Hammond Collier for our civil stuff,
Oh,
just
yeah.
partially through Trillium and at the start of Westbrook. From there, we lost Hammond Collier, who was our civil engineer. We had no one to do any of the civil inspections out there, so who do you think did them all? Pulte, that whole site up to 145 was all mine. I did that entire thing, other than some of the infiltration and the vault civil inspections there. But everything on the Pulte site was reviewed by me, inspected by me. And yeah, I was busy. We never once had to hire anyone out
That's good
to
to
do
know. Yeah,
inspections.
that's good to know.
We actually have a blueprint for exactly what you're thinking about.
Yeah.
Another big.
And I don't mean to say that,
Yeah. But,
but there was. When Pulte came in, our single family homes additions were kind of down and boom, we get this big influx of buildings coming in and so. For me, I do it all, so. Go ahead.
no, Larry's place was, definitely, it took a lot of time and stuff, so we know what happened there. We will deputize Larry to be the inspector for that neighborhood. John, you had a question too.
So I want to raise sort of 3 points. One is inequity, and that means that if we're not generating enough fee to cover our services, that means money from something else has to go pay for. And when we talk about custom homes, one of the equity things is why are those who most afford the custom home really getting a break? They're not paying their fair share. There are other people who aren't getting the custom homes, aren't getting the they're paying for the services for which they're not getting any benefits from. So we need to be aware of an equity issue, that we are charging appropriate fees because those that are using those services, in many cases, like on a building, a custom home is not a necessity, it is a desire. There are a lot of people who can't afford custom. The other is that, do we have provisions that on large projects that we don't charge our fee, we charge our actuals? Meaning that if we have to hire an outside firm to do a review of a Pulte or a shopping.
Yeah, we did that.
We do that.
So-
Yeah, we did it
So that's not,
with Pace. Yeah. you're right.
okay. So that's something good, because I don't want us to then have to charge the regular homeowner because we can't service them.
No.
So the
Like
fact-
right now, we have
But-
Pace on for, well, we have a 4-story that's supposed, well, it's broken ground, it's gonna be going. Pace will be doing all the civil site inspections, but there's also special inspections and they give us a bill and then we have to charge the contractor for that outside source.
Okay, so that's good.
So,
The other is that when we think about our fees, it's not just our hourly cost. We also have to think about our infrastructure cost. So what does it take for us, not just the overhead, but improvements to our infrastructure, such as our website? Is it user friendly? What is the cost of money in maintaining that? Do we have our fees to say that we need to improve our infrastructure and therefore our fees need to be at a higher level to cover that capital expenditure that needs to occur?
well, I know that from the budgeting that I've received from Lindsay, like last year of when we go through budgeting, we've been very close to paying for ourselves.
I think that more to it.
Yeah,
But
we're
I
talking about,
understand-
like, the technology.
I understand
We have
where
the
you're going.
technology.
Yeah, we have technology on top of, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Go ahead.
One other quick thought. I just wanted to, this is actually a great segue. Calvin, you're kind of in the hot seat, really, because
Oh, sure.
this is the first budgetary kind of real, discussion. And I want to make it really clear. It sounds kind of trite, but from my perspective, putting my hat on as budget chair, when we talk about city services and departmental budgets and things like that, I don't think there's a person in this room that is not going to say, we want to make sure that you guys are supported and helped out. Whatever we got to do, recovering fees, making sure on the policy side, we can do what we've got to do to make sure that we're doing the right thing so that you guys can do the good work you do. And so I just wanted to throw that in there because it is, we're gonna have departmental conversations here coming in the coming week. And so I thank you for this because I think it's a great conversation and you know, again, I will defer to you and the administration. We all defer to you and the administration about schedule, about when we need to do this update. From my perspective, it might be beneficial to do it on a more regular basis so we can make sure we take care of getting your resourcing, right? And so it's not a, it's just a, you know, trying to make it move forward in a way that with scarce resources, you guys don't have to keep carrying the water all the time. And then, you know,
I have no problem if you guys decide, when Phil says to me, you'll do it every year. I'll do it gladly.
Right, yeah, if it helps.
But
if
even
it
if it
helps,
helps,
yeah.
even if we did, fine.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, I mean, I can see, I mean, there's obviously methodology for taking building expenditures with biennium.
Yep.
And comparing what we're charging and are we paying for ourselves, but I guess that's not the only expenditure we have. So I think we back up.
Sure.
That's not too difficult.
No, I think that's. Welcome to the budget talk, because this is going to be, my message basically says this, you guys are the council that I believe can take the city to the future, which we need to do. And I know it's frustrating for you, John and Lori, but you know, be honest, this is our real first whack at having Phil and Lindsay and the team together, because we got blown out by COVID. We should be where we're at talking right now, probably would have been 2 years ago, but we had no option to do that. It just
I'm
wasn't
just
there.
encouraging.
But no, there's gonna be a lot of this, and that's what the budget's gonna have to be. We have to pick ourselves and make sure we are doing the right thing. Citizens need, but we can't give it away. So, you know, like I say, we have to make the money to pay for him, but it's gonna go through all our situations in the budget. We're gonna have to look at this. Yes.
Like Lori, I'm trying to encourage.
I know,
want us
sure.
to recover our costs and that our services are appropriate. So that we aren't having citizens pay for services that they're not receiving. And, I would like to talk about the IBC.
Yes. Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, are we? Okay,
We're done, please.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we're down, we've got about 10, 15 minutes.
okay. Let me just say one thing, John, just for clarity, as far as why we're adopting now versus earlier. I was going over the different states that are still in the 2015 code. They were stuck in the same boat we are. There's about, again, I have a list of the states that haven't even adopted the 18 code yet. There's plenty of them. For us, it was COVID. I lost the permit tech. I worked here by myself for a year without any help other than a planner part-time. And we still took in $60,000 more than we did the year before. And I was pounded with inspections. So typically I try to stay on top of this stuff. I know Phil and everybody's always nudged me to get it done. I've just been really, really busy. Not a good great excuse, but I can tell you this, the 2021 code won't be adopted until next July of 2023. So if it gets adopted then, but I can tell you this, it'll get adopted the minute the state adopts it. I won't be sitting behind. So.
Okay. So on the, other adoption of 2087 we're discussing right there is it's not gonna happen until
I'm sorry? No, the 18 will happen
now
In
is
the
what we're
next
doing.
month or two.
The what?
The 18. 20.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you're hoping the next one won't have as long of a lag.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
No,
hearing. The
it
next
will
one will be a
not.
little bit
No,
swifter turnaround.
Like I
to
said,
our-
Yeah, what year is it?
So.
So I think John has a question. or something.
Well, even our city attorney was
We're gonna come back.
a year ago about it, and we got stuck, so.
I'm gonna ask some questions, because we have about 10 minutes, while we go to the police, so John, take it away.
Thank you. I'm completely supportive of adopting the community code. Totally get that. The two things I wanna address is, I think there should be sort of an overlap period, and this is traditional with other agencies, is that when you adopt a new code, there is a transition period that you can apply under either code. As the ordinance is written, it becomes effective on the date that the ordinance is adopted. And that means that if you've been designing, because you knew Lake Forest Park was in 2015, if you're designing under 2015 for whatever reason, once it's-
Pipeline already.
once it's signed, you then have to go back and modify your design to reflect the 2018. In my experience in doing this for many, many years, is there's always a grace or a transition period. City of Seattle for 6 months. So in that 6-month period, you can adopt the ordinance and you can accept either the previous or the current. And I would encourage that we do that just for,
A 6-month turnaround time.
No,
So you accept.
Overlap.
Either.
Both codes
Yeah,
for
you
6
accept
months.
either one.
So either 15 or 18, spent under either of two.
Oh, sure,
Disney.
I'm all for that.
I think that's great. I think that's great.
Yeah, okay, I got
Because
you.
it
I'm
makes
sorry.
it easier
Makes it easier for
for the.
everybody.
For the,
I think my seat's too high.
Yeah, I'll turn it.
I'm gonna get a bunch of light bulbs for each of our heads.
Yeah.
so I would like to see a transition period that you can. adopt,
Yeah,
once the ordinance is
we
adopted.
gladly do that. Yeah, I've had people that wanted to use the upcoming code for submittal, and I went, absolutely, because you're not going more restrictive. What you have works.
Yeah.
And I've been through this for 34 years, so
Last time we said it was 18. What is it?
it's 18 here, but it's 16 in the other
Go ahead,
place.
John.
So my other is that we're adopting in whole the International Fire Code. And I'm not seeing the necessity of that, because in your ordinance, you adopt it by reference.
We're adopting, yeah.
You adopt it by reference and then you adopt it in whole. And I don't see the value of it, other than adding pages to a municipal code. Now, I get that these codes change, and there's a significant difference between 2015 and 2018 fire code, which is fine. And that's resolved by just saying it's adopted by reference. The reason agencies would oftentimes have their own is because the agency would adopt city or agency specific portions of the code. So for example, Seattle has Seattle Building Code. And they've got their own special things, but if we don't have anything special to Lake Forest Park, I wouldn't adopt the code in whole. I would just do as you've done already, which is adopted by reference. And again, it goes back to, don't make the code any bigger than it has to be, and
But don't just repeat it.
just
Yeah.
don't repeat it. So I would ask, unless there's something specific about Lake
What
Forest
we're
Park
adopting.
and what we're adopting is that we just adopted by reference, which in fact, we're doing both. We're adopting it by reference and then we're adopting it whole.
The summary suggests updating the chapter 1510 local amendments to fire code, update the local amendments to fire code. So
Right.
we do have some local amendments to the fire,
Yes,
not to the building code, but just the
Right.
fire code.
right.
Is that why we're including the entire fire code rather than just,
You
the
know, as far
amendments?
as the parts of the code that have been updated or that they want to adopt in our ordinance. That was all done through me and Jeff LaFlamme, who's been retired for 2 years. And that was just tweaking what we already had. There's really nothing of substance there that really changes the fire code per se. It's more-
but is that why we're adopting the whole language of the fire code? Because
Yes.
it includes our,
You've got
our
our
amendment.
ordinance, the changes to the ordinance.
okay.
Fire code.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that
That would,
clarify some?
it would, except when I looked at the proposed adopted fire code, there's only one change. That has to do.
radii,
No, mobile food facilities not located
Oh.
within 10 feet of the building.
that one.
Now, there's some language there that they have added for radio coverage, and some other things, but like I said,
But,
most of what they're doing is just tweaking what they have.
but I guess my question is, what is Lake Forest Park doing different that we want to adopt the code? Why is Lake Forest Park different?
What are we changing to the fire code? We just have to adopt it.
Yeah.
Okay, we can talk to legal counsel and just.
Yeah,
And the fire department, because we're represented. Shoreline, North Shore. So what changes? Yeah, pretty much. We can highlight those. If they're many.
just on point, yeah, I think that's appropriate because I know that our legal team in the past has had concerns about the difference between adopting in whole and by reference because of the way things have gone in the past. There's been, whole scale, if you adopted a whole scale and you adopt it by reference, and then something changes, it makes it harder to update it. There's lots of kind of,
Something happened in the past. I'm trying to remember too. This was
yeah,
after
it did. We did, and
the
we got
fire chief in here and all that. had-
we got kind of burned unintended, but there was something about the fire code. I can't remember what it was. So,
we thought
yeah,
people look back.
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
right now we're doing both.
Yeah, it should be one or the other.
Yeah, I remember that.
Remember that, thanks. My mind was failing me.
Not just
Anything else, council? We all need to get upstairs, have a break. Thank you. This is gonna be, we're looking forward to you guys taking care of us and making things right.
Yeah, thanks, Cal.
Yeah, I had a whole list of stuff that I was gonna go over, but the changes. I have anything you guys need on any of the changes or any of that stuff?
We can certainly bookmark it for another
Next
conversation. if it's Okay for you.
Yeah.
Everyone's welcome back.
Had a pretty good conversation. about it.
For me, it would be what's different from the proposed code? What is unique to Lake Forest? The code changes every 3 years.
Yeah, well, there's nothing unique to Lake Forest Park, it's just unique in itself.
Yeah, so I mean,
Changes that.
so as a sort of policy thing, I'm fine with adopting the code. I mean, I've done this for 30 years with new codes every 3 years. It's if we're doing something that's unique to Lake Forest Park.
outside of the IBC.
Yeah.
Yeah, the question is why.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Calvin
Okay.
likes to give us a rundown of the differences between 15 and 18, so that we understand that
You bet.
difference, because he makes great diagrams. So that just helps us kind of get a sense of how different it is.
That
Which,
would
like
really-
you say, it's usually pretty minor.
Yeah, we don't tweak the building codes.
Not yet.
No,
Fit LFP,
no,
so.
it's not a good, it's
The
not
only
a good
thing we have
practice.
is just the fee schedules.
Calvin,
Well, we'll bookmark it then. If you'd like to bring it back, 30 minutes at another meeting.
Yeah, we're gonna need to
Yeah,
bring it back.
yeah,
because we have to walk through the
Yeah.
review
Okay.
Yeah.
and
Excellent.
transition period that's done. And we'll bring up fire.
and anybody who wants to do, Calvin loves having a ride along. He loves to chat while he's working. during the day.
Sounds good.
Sign up for that. Okay, guys, adjourned.